Brother Kweku Baffour, who's joining us from Ghana. But we also have Atlanta in the house. We have Toronto in the house. Of course, we have Detroit in the house. We have Asheville, North Carolina in the house. We have Flint, Michigan in the house. And I'm sure we are Washington, D.C. Sister Adio is here. And I'm sure we have other folks from other places who have not checked in yet. St. Louis in the house. Sister Tasha, New Orleans in the house. Dr. Jazz. Keep them coming. Ann Arbor in the house. Sister Kiza. So we thank you all for joining. And I want to start by first giving praise to the Creator, however you might recognize the force that allows us to have consciousness and to take a breath each day, take several breaths each day. And I also want to acknowledge our ancestors, our common ancestors that we share as African people, and also those within our individual family bloodlines. And acknowledge that our ancestors have created a tremendous example for us. They continue to inspire us. Those of us, those who did good things, that is, we have some ancestors who were also traitors and capitulators, but those who did good things continue to inspire us, and we continue to look at their example. I want to talk for just a minute about why we're doing this webinar series. As you probably know, over the last 5 years or so, there's been a lot of energy in the United States among Black food activists, kind of shifting our focus from what we formerly called food security and food justice to food sovereignty. And that shift in terminology also happened in conjunction with many oppressed groups throughout the world who are struggling against global capitalism and the food system associated with global capitalism. So the organization Via Campesina, the international peasant, some people use that word, organization, has really advanced this term food sovereignty to get us thinking about moving beyond just addressing hunger, which is really what food security does. Although food security is important, there are some reasons that people are hungry. And food sovereignty gets at those root causes, and it gets at the power differential that exists that causes Black communities throughout the world to experience food insecurity and the lack of food sovereignty. So really, food sovereignty is about building the power to define the food system that provides our food. That includes determining what we produce, how it's produced, what our relationship is with the land, and also, very importantly, making sure that the profits that are generated from our labor and our agricultural efforts are used to enhance our communities and are not extracted in a colonial fashion. So over the last 5 years or so, there's been a lot of good activity focused on building Black food sovereignty in the United States. But simultaneously, there have been parallel activities in other parts of the African world. This series seeks to uplift and shine light on some of those efforts. Secondly, the food system that we seek to abolish is inseparably linked to global capitalism and global white power. Our response must therefore also be global. Our struggles to create models of self-determination, of self-determining non-extractive food economies are made more powerful when we build solidarity and meaningful relationships with Africans globally, as well as with other oppressed groups striving to build food sovereignty. Fourthly, we are all made richer when we have a greater awareness of the ideas and the practices of Africans globally striving to recover from the impact of colonialism and enslavement and to build the power needed to control our communities. Fifthly, that includes ideas about how we produce and distribute food, as well as ideas about how we organize and govern ourselves and respond to the ongoing threats posed by global capitalism and the global system of white supremacy. And finally, by examining the efforts of select global Black food sovereignty activists, this series is designed to sharpen the ideas driving our work and to inspire us to expand and become more effective in our efforts to build Black food sovereignty. We are so pleased to begin this series tonight with Brother Kweku Baffour. And I want to first thank the mother of my two oldest children, Nkiruka Yakini, who lived in Ghana for 9 years, for introducing me to Brother Kweku and thus making this first webinar possible. I'd like to read to you a very short bio for Brother Kweku and then talk to you briefly about the organization he represents before bringing him on. Kweku Baffour is a Pan-Africanist, born in Ghana and traveled extensively around the world, but he maintains that Africa is the most beautiful continent. He has worked in senior management positions within corporate Ghana, and after departing that path, he began working for himself in 2010. Since 2015, Brother Kweku has volunteered as the Communications Director for Food Sovereignty Ghana, a civil society organization advocating against the inclusion of genetically modified organisms in Ghana's agriculture. He also served as the Vegetarian Association of Ghana's Public Relations Officer for more than a decade, and he is currently the Advocacy Director for the Vegetarian Association of Ghana. With several languages at his command, he is able to think in a multicultural dimension, bringing a special touch to his work. He's passionate about the natural environment and the preservation of African culture and history, which is a global asset to humanity. He has ably steered the affairs of many special events as the master of ceremony and has also participated in radio and TV programs for almost 2 decades. Brother Ando loves music and art. And before I bring him on, I just want to say briefly, and he'll give you more detail about this, Food Sovereignty Ghana is a grassroots movement of Ghanaians at home and abroad dedicated to the promotion of food sovereignty in Ghana. Our group believes in the collective control of our collective resources rather than the control of our resources by multinational corporations and other foreign entities. With that, we'd like to welcome Brother Kweku Baffour.
Thank you very much, Malik, and greetings to everyone on the call.
Greetings, Brother Baffour. How are you today?
Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you.
Good. So where are you now? What part of Ghana are you in today?
Accra, the capital city.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So we're going to have just kind of an informal discussion for a while, and then we're going to open it up and let those participants ask questions of you or make comments to you. And I'm sure this is going to be rewarding for everybody involved. So why don't we start by describing what does agriculture look like in Ghana?
Okay, thanks. Well, I mean, Ghana is blessed with a lot of abundant arable land, lots of sunshine, rainfall, and very wide biodiversity. We're truly blessed by the Creator. So all kinds of food can grow in Ghana. Unfortunately, Ghana, like many other African countries, suffers from the legacy of colonialism. And so colonialism still exists as a legacy, even in the way we do our agriculture, in the way we are growing our food, because we still import a lot of food, given all the comparative advantage that I named, you know, the sunshine, the soil, rainfall, the land. We still import a lot of food for a country that should be using its resources for the best of the welfare of its people. So we are still export, minded as far as the best of our food, and it's not the best for food sovereignty, because then the forces of profit then come into play, and then profit then leads to commercializing tastes. So now Ghanaians are changing their tastes, eating more pizza, more noodles, all kinds of food. And then the natural food, which has the higher nutritional value, is being relegated down. And in fact, there are now foods where 10 years ago, you can hardly find on the streets now. So that's reflective of the fact that there is a very strong legacy of colonialism in the way that our agriculture is even structured. The fact that we still are not following the way of our ancestors, doing organic farming, not doing chemical farming, and respecting the land around, respecting the water bodies. So the state of agriculture in Ghana, like many other African countries, reflects this legacy of colonialism. Having said that, like I said, we are blessed with land, so an abundance of crops grow here. And if you do make the effort, you can get, very good harvests. But again, the importance is the sustainability of any food production system, how you're producing the food and whether the food that you're producing is going to positively benefit the environment surrounding the animals and the water bodies. So we need to think about this when we're making policy. But yes, Ghana is a country that's still importing too much food for what we have, and we've been exposed, like many other African countries now, with this Ukraine-Russia conflict, to find that there's certain imports. Fertilizer, for instance, a whole bunch comes from Ukraine and China. Ukraine and Russia. And basically, we need to be using organic fertilizer. We shouldn't be importing chemical fertilizer from halfway around the world. So these things are exposing some of the inadequacies in our policies. And as a civil society organization, our job is to try and point these things out to the key stakeholders, always in the interest of the Ghanaian. Sometimes a civil society organization will be tagged by one government or another, depending on what you're saying. But we exist for the welfare of Ghanaians, both at home and abroad.
So you mentioned some of the best food is grown for export. Can you say more about that?
Well, yes. There's lots of, the cash crop here in Ghana is cocoa. So that's the main crop that's grown by farmers, but there's maize that's grown for export, groundnuts, soybeans, pineapples, mangoes, peppers, okra. So there's quite a wide range of foods that is exported, to countries that, see the value of having fresh produce coming in. And so the traditional markets are Europe and then some into North America. But basically, yes, beans, we don't do sugar here. But yes, those are the main cash crops that go out for export.
And so you also mentioned that many foods are imported into Ghana. What are some of those foods that Ghanaians eat on a daily basis that are coming from outside of Ghana?
Well, like rice, sugar, flour, wheat, and then all kinds of vegetables. At some point, we even import tomatoes from our neighbor, Burkina Faso. All kinds of canned food, packet food, because like I said, tastes are changing. So you're finding more packet food in Ghana, whereas we have all the fresh stuff. But this is, again, to do with this whole globalization and us getting lost in this globalization whirlwind without realizing that you need to be rooted in the way of life of your ancestors, and we should be proud of it. And it's because of this lack of prowess for our heritage. A lot of people are relegating the local culture, which comes with food. Food is culture, and adopting the food of other countries. And so now lots of billboards of pizza joints, burgers, and so on and so forth. But the most nutritional food is more and more being eaten less by families, which is very unfortunate.
I know one of the things that underdevelops Africa is the restrictions put on countries by the International Monetary Fund structural adjustments where, for example, a country might be able to produce the raw product but can't produce the finished product. Since cocoa is the main export, is there any processing of cocoa and producing of finished products in Ghana?
Yeah, we have a state-owned company, cocoa processing company, which produces chocolate, the best chocolate in the world. That's Golden Tree chocolate, very high cocoa content. Most of the chocolate in the world is full of milk powder and milk substitutes, but the chocolate in Ghana is A1. And so the cocoa processing company does that in Ghana, but we should be doing way more, because the bulk of what goes out to be produced outside. So I think the was about $20 billion, and the value of the chocolate industry was about $60 billion. And most of that occurs outside the country. But now you're seeing a few more small, producers, independent producers who are making chocolate from Ghana. And because they make it from here, they have very, again, high, cocoa value, cocoa content. So all the chocolate made from here is good, but we should be making way more. We should be dictating the terms so that if companies want to manufacture, they come and build here, or use our resources and our labor in a more equitable manner.
So does Carnation Market still exist in Accra?
Well, I think it's a changed name now. Thank God, I haven't heard that name recently. But yes, I know there is a name like that. One of the markets in town.
So the question I want to ask you is, how does the average Ghanaian get their food? Do they go to traditional markets? Do they go to grocery stores? Do they buy directly from farmers? What does that system look like?
Yeah, I mean, the average grassroots Ghanaian buys their food from markets. Mm-hmm. That's the majority of the Ghanaian buys their food from markets. They do buy a little bit from supermarkets, but it's mostly the middle income to higher income brackets that frequent the supermarkets. But because the markets are located in every neighborhood, and they often are the cheapest source of food, and often in its most fresh form. So the grassroots people do buy most of their food from markets, although you do see lots of supermarkets popping up again because of urbanization. So the cities are quite a little different now from the rural areas in Ghana. I mean, in the cities, in lots of African countries now, there's so much urbanization. So like I said, the whole pizza vibe, the hamburger vibe, makes it quite different from even rural Ghana, where people still eat quite good locally, because they walk to the farm every day. They remove food from the soil every morning. The wisdom of their ancestors, which is informed by ancient wisdom, because the nutritional value of food that you pull out of the soil in the morning has a different value from food that you buy from a market. And our ancestors could have easily decided to, do a very heavy day of harvesting on one day and then relax for the next 5 days, maybe go back on the weekend. But they walk to the farm every morning and they pluck, cocoyam or yam or, spinach and all kinds of vegetables to cook that day, because the nutritional value of that food is its highest. This doesn't happen in cities. So you can see how the way of the ancestors is always best. And I believe as Africans, we're going to come back to square one to have to really build properly, because we've thrown away the most valuable knowledge, which was given to the universe by us. All the science, the mathematics, the engineering, knowledge in agriculture and astrology came from the African man and woman. And we have relegated all of that ancient wisdom, because we've been on this planet for thousands of years. We've just relegated all that wisdom for the latest, newest, not so heavy. But yes, I believe we'll have to go back, because at the end of the day, the reason why our ancestors did what they did was there was a factual reason to do that for a benefit. And we will eventually have to go back when we realize how much we've hit the wall and how much we will suffer for all that we let go, all that we don't follow, be it in the way we eat or the way we dress or the way we think and so on and so forth, the way we build, you know.
So, Brother Kweku, excuse me, to what extent does hunger exist in Ghana?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't really say there's hunger in Ghana in the sense that people don't have food to eat. That food is expensive, and it's been more expensive recently. But you got the rural areas, like I said, if a seed falls down, the soil is so fertile that it will start growing. So people who live in the rural areas have they have food all around, and because they are not living in so much of an urban mindset, they grow food around them. Because, as they say, growing food is like printing your own money. So in having food around them, they save money. They live on their land with their farms, and they go, you know, to get something that they need, and they carry very little money in their pockets. If you go to rural areas, most people carry very little cash in their pockets because they only use it to buy the very necessities that they can't make or barter from another community. So it's very important that, you know, we take note of these different ancient knowledges that we need to, you know, hold on to for our own good.
So let's talk about the origins of the organization that you serve as communications director for Food Sovereignty Ghana. How did that get started?
Okay, so Food Sovereignty Ghana started as a conversation between some Pan-Africanists, and they were interested in, you know, sorting out these issues about our social welfare for Ghanaians at home and abroad. So this was in 2013, and it was at the Freedom Center in Accra here. And so we, you know, people like Comrade Ali and Comrade Kwesi Pratt, our founding members, they were having this conversation about the need for us to be sovereign in our food. And then the rest is history. We started in 2013 doing advocacy mainly for the government not to include GMOs, genetically modified organisms, into our food chain and our agriculture. Because in 2011, the biosafety bill was passed in Ghana, which allowed Ghana to start dabbling into genetically modified organisms, or, you know, genetic engineering in general. And it wasn't up till 2013 that we started realizing what was going on, and we started challenging things in court in 2015 when we heard that there was an injunction, that there was an application to release commercially genetically modified cowpea. And so we sought an injunction in the High Court, and unfortunately that injunction was dismissed. We so far appealed it, and we're still following up that appeal. And so we started a substantive case in 2019. Well, in 2017, sorry, we started a substantive case so that Ghana would not go the GMO way. And we are currently still in court as we speak. It's taken about 7 years to get to this point. We just had testimonies submitted, both sides, and currently the defense is being cross-examined by our counsel. So we're looking forward to the case progressing. But yes, we've been very active in, you know, litigation, taking the government on where the law, we feel, you know, may be otherwise. Also doing a lot of advocacy, going on radio, TV, social media, and then in person, doing a lot of stakeholder engagement with the market women, the taxi drivers, the going to the lorry stations to teach them about GMO, because the government and the pro-GM lobby are advocating that, you know, GMO is safe to eat, that it's going to be beneficial for our farmers, going to provide them higher yields. And we feel contrary to that. In fact, we always pick our neighbor, Burkina Faso, who started growing genetically modified cotton for 5 years, and then eventually phased that out about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, phased GM cotton out because they started realizing a shorter fiber and a lower quality fiber. And so they went back to their conventional strains. And ironically, when they went back to the conventional strains, they were getting higher yields than these GM cotton crops were giving them. So right next door, our own neighbor has shown us that the whole thing about GM crops giving a bigger yield is a myth. It didn't happen right next door, so we don't need to see anything more. This is the position that we have, because first of all, we believe fundamentally that there are 4 main problems that plague agriculture and food production in Ghana and Africa in general, in extension. Now, these are: 1, a lack of roads from the farm gate to the market. 2 is a lack of access to credit for farmers. Then number 3 is a lack of irrigation technology, so we still rely on rainfall. And then 4 is lack of post-harvest infrastructure, so that what you harvest doesn't get eaten up by pests and rot away. Now, without solving these 4 pillars, these 4 problems, GM crops will still rot on the farm. You know, farmers who farm GM crops, you know, are still not going to have irrigation to irrigate them, and so on and so forth. So we have fundamental problems with agriculture which we need to look at. Those are the low-hanging fruits we need to solve. And we believe that GM is just so high in the sky. It's not something we need now, but it's being, you know, lobbied and pushed as an agenda. It's certainly an agenda that's being pushed from outside. In fact, most of the labs and the agencies who speak on behalf of GMO and in favor of GMO are all sponsored by companies in the agribusiness industry or these foundations and institutions whose sole purpose is to try and, you know, control food systems around the world. So when you see,
can we name some names? Who are those groups specifically that are advocating in Ghana?
Oh, like the Alliance for Science, which is affiliated with Cornell University. Then you have OFAB, the Open Forum, I believe for agricultural something, OFAB. You have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You have AGRA, and these are some of the culprits. Monsanto, who are you know, pushing for Ghana to go GM, and many African countries for that matter. Which is quite unfortunate because, like I said, the people who speak for GMO are all being funded, and they are literally paid on a payroll. They go to a lab that's funded by these people, and so their whole life is evolved around the need for this funding to continue, the need for this research, which is always specific, to continue. And most of the time, the research isn't really to the benefit of the host country. It goes to endure to the benefit of the funder, you know. So we don't believe the hype.
So besides for your concern that there's not greater crop yield by GMOs, what are your other concerns about genetically modified crops? Could you hear my question?
Okay.
Really quickly?
Yeah, I heard your question. Well, I mean, one of the most fundamental positions we have is the fact that there's no consensus amongst the scientific community itself on the safety of GMOs. So this is not even us, who is civil society organization working in agriculture and farming on the land, but you know, the scientists themselves, molecular scientists, botanists, you know, a great number of them disagree with the fact that GMOs are safe, and a lot of independent research goes to show that indeed they are not, that they are injurious to plant life, animal life, and human health. So we feel that it's rather unfortunate that, you know, these untruths are being, you know, pushed about because of funding, and the same usual suspects are the culprits. I just lost a train of thought. The question you just asked.
You answered the question. I want to say something to the people in the chat. I see people putting questions in the chat, and I just want to remind you that at about 8 o'clock we're going to open up for Q&A. So Imara and others who have questions for Brother Kweku, hold your questions for just a few minutes, and we'll get right back to them. So Brother Kweku, a couple more questions about Food Sovereignty Ghana. Getting back to that. And thank you for explaining the problems with genetically modified crops. What role do women play in Food Sovereignty Ghana? And also, what does the membership look like? Is it an organization of farmers? Is it primarily intellectuals? Is it activists? What does the membership look like?
Okay, I mean, we have a very diverse membership across different stakeholder groupings, but we don't, consider sort of like a card-bearing member. We deal with different farmers groups. We have different communities that we engage with, different, stakeholder groupings. So we work with the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, the General Agricultural Workers Union, the Rastafari Council of Ghana, the Vegetarian Association of Ghana. And then we also, when it was time to do the lobbying, we approached the Christian Council of Ghana and the Ghana Muslim Mission to educate them on the need to be aware about what's going on in the food system and the food chain. So we've been quite active on the stakeholder engagement on that angle.
And again, what is the role of women in the organization, or the roles, I should say, of women?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of support from our sisters, because I mean, food has a lot to do with the nourishing nature of our sisters, our mothers, aunties, and so within the executive, we have 2 ladies on our executive. Our vice chair is a lady, and then we have lots of affiliates and members, supporters. On our Facebook, for instance, there's over 16,000 members. Then we have support on the ground here. The markets, when we go to the markets, the market women, then different farmers groups in different communities in the Volta region, in the Central region. But we recognize the importance of women, because the role of women in the food system in Ghana, they play the most important role. They are the hardest workers on the land, and often if they get to be given some kind of a positive key, it's likely that they can influence the family to start doing that, especially when it comes to food and crops, because they work a lot in the land. So they're a very vital part of Ghana's food sovereignty. In fact, the role that market women play is very key. They, through their what's the word, they're very creative and innovative, so they bring food from the rural areas to the markets, to create an income for themselves, so they put on a little margin where they have to, but they go out in the hinterland and look for food and bring it to the city. So they play a very, very vital role, and we always celebrate them, we always salute them. One of our biggest supporters is the Honorable Samia Nkrumah, who's the daughter of our first president, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and we're very proud of her support. She also comes with her own constituency of support in itself. So it's women are very important to food sovereignty.
So you mentioned that Food Sovereignty Ghana has basically focused on court cases to try to prevent GMOs in Ghana, or to try to, I'm assuming they're there already, so you're really trying to remove them. Is that correct?
No, they're not being grown here officially, according to what we're told. They're not growing here yet. They're seeking to now release commercially a genetically modified version of the cowpea. Now, we're very concerned about that because there's no research in the world to show the effects on the consumption of cowpeas that have been genetically modified. It doesn't exist in the world. So as far as risk assessments, we wonder what gives the authorities the confidence to tell Ghanaians that it's safe to eat, safe to consume. The cowpea is a staple crop. It's a very important crop in the whole sub-region. It's a very important source of protein for grassroots typical families. So it's not a crop that you want to tamper with genetically, especially in the home of the cowpea. Ghana is one of the home of origins of the cowpea. That's why you have the black-eyed pea now in North America, because it was our brothers and sisters that took the cowpea from Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Liberia, and took it to the US. And you know how important the cowpea is in our diet as a family and as a nation. And I don't think you want to start eating genetically modified cowpeas. And I'm sure you'll understand the impact on locally existing varieties if a genetically modified cowpea is released into the environment. And that is our concern in Ghana, because there are over 20 different varieties of, the cowpea in the sub-region. And Nigeria has gone ahead and released this GM cowpea. So we're very concerned about the spread of it. And so we're encouraging lots of seed saving, people to save the local seeds, to plant them, because that's the best way to keep them, in the system.
So you mentioned that the case is still in court. Is that court case what's preventing GMO cowpeas from being distributed in Ghana? Is that the only thing stopping it right now?
Yes, well, right now we are in court with them, but they haven't gotten full approval from the National Biosafety Authority. So they're in the application process for the go-ahead to release it, but they supposedly have done their research and they're ready to go ahead and release it. So they are now applying officially to the regulator. But we believe that, like I said, with no risk assessment, no epidemiological studies on the consumption of cowpeas on human health, if you can show us such studies, then you can tell us that BT cowpea is healthy to eat. It's the first time it's been genetically modified, and indeed, independent research shows that the toxicity of the BT, which stands for Bacillus thuringiensis, it's a bacteria which naturally occurs in the soil, but has been genetically engineered so the plant produces this bacteria and then essentially becomes like a pesticide itself. So the plant is like a living pesticide. And you can't tell me that animals that eat these cowpea stalks, as well as the human beings that eat the cowpea itself, are not going to be affected when the toxicity of the bacteria in the plant is much higher than that when it exists naturally in the soil. So these are very big concerns that we want the regulators to pay attention to and to provide some answers.
So typically the people pushing GMOs have lots and lots of money. And I'm wondering, how are you doing battle in court with these very powerful, wealthy forces?
Yeah, it's been a struggle. I mean, we've really toiled because, like you say, most of the money is on the other side. So it's been a lot of our personal sacrifice, from our own pockets. And court is all about filing fees and up and down. I mean, we've been in court for 7 years, so you can imagine. Just in transportation to court alone is something for 7 years. But not to talk about the lawyers' fees. We've been lucky that we had our lawyer who started off pro bono with us. But recently we had a little support from the Africa Center for Biodiversity, so that we could challenge the constitutionality of the new Plant Variety Protection Act at the Supreme Court. But a lot of the money that we've used has come from ourselves. We are now trying to start, raising funds so that we can move to the next dimension and do more things, do more engagements, because we've done quite a good job, as small as we are, but we need to now, grow, reach more farmers and that kind of stuff. So we'll be raising funds soon. We'll be putting a fundraiser number on our website so that we can have people send money, $1 here, $10 if you care, whatever it is. But that goes a long way to help us fund the sort of work we do. Otherwise, yes, it's quite difficult because the other side has all the money. The media houses, a lot of them have been compromised because they've been taken on these resorts and taken for conferences on pro-GMO, and by the time they come back, they've been fed 3 days of GM in their head, and then with a nice bag and a T-shirt or something, and then they're these biggest fanatics of GMO, you know, to the detriment of the other Ghanaian, you know, telling us that GM cowpeas are safe, that we should lose all our local cowpeas because your master wants to fund a cowpea project in Ghana. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and we will continue to resist it. Most Ghanaians don't want to be eating anything which is unnatural. Most Ghanaians will prefer to eat like their ancestors ate, which is organic. Most Ghanaians realize the impact that chemicals are having on our farms, because even farmers who you know, have had no education understand the value of seeing snails on their farms, seeing mushrooms growing on their farms, and they know that when you spray these chemicals, you don't see these things anymore. There are certain fruits and herbs which will never grow anywhere where a pesticide has been sprayed. The traditional healers will tell you that they have to go further and further out to look for these traditional remedies, because more and more land is being sprayed by these chemicals, and so these naturally occurring herbs now tend to grow further and further away from, you know, where we live, and these are some of the detrimental effects of going down this GM way, especially because the world is demanding more organic food. I mean, you know that's over there, and it's true even over here. There's a premium on the price of organic food. So why wouldn't we want to encourage our farmers to get into a regime where they can earn more money for their produce? Why would Ghana want to encourage, you know, more chemical farming in 2022? So these are some of the things we're trying to get policymakers to see beyond the small short-term profits, because if your lands can't produce food in 10, 15, 20 years, then you'll see the real cost of spraying these chemicals on your land, thinking that that's the shortcut, that's the fast way, and we'll all pay in the end.
Are you in conversation with other African food sovereignty organizations?
Yes, we have allies in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Kenya, South Africa, Benin, Togo. We had a conference last month sponsored by the Africa Center for Biodiversity in Nairobi, Kenya, where different civil society organizations like ourselves got together to look at ways of you know, bolstering this fight and getting our people involved. And once our people understand it, there's nothing that's going to happen for any government that wants to do it, because the people will just refuse it. Currently, the people have been lulled and they're being, you know, encouraged to think that it's good for them, that the farmers are being told they're going to get higher yields and so on and so forth. But when they see it for themselves, hopefully not, that their farms won't burn after using all these chemicals for seasons, but eventually they'll realize that the best way was the organic way. And, you know, like I said, from even asking them about snails and mushrooms, they can already see that there's a sort of farming which is a healthier, better type of farming.
So what would you say is your vision for African food sovereignty? What would that look like?
Well, certainly Africa is a very huge mass of land. Africa is about 4 times the size of the US. You can fit China, India, Western Europe, and the US into Africa. So we have so much land. That means we have a huge diversity of different types of food, different types of fruits, herbs, seeds, grains, nuts. I'd like to see a time when all those indigenous foods are being hyped. They're being grown, they're being sold in markets, that families are eating those more nutritious foods and abandoning the noodles and the pizzas and all the new food, you know, that's we've learned from the movies and stuff. Where we start eating more fonio. You know, I know that out there, fonio is considered a superfood. it was one of the grains that our ancestors ate here. It's an alkaline grain, and yet we don't hear about fonio in Ghana on a regular basis. You have to look for it. It's a sort of niche kind of thing. If you're not in certain circles, you may never have heard of fonio. But this is a grain that is so high in folic acid and high in iron, has as much protein as eggs. A grain, you know, and you'd wonder why a government wouldn't be promoting this rather than, you know, encouraging, you know, rice to come from Vietnam. You know, so a rice farmer in Ghana, because of the policies that we have, a rice farmer in Ghana cannot grow rice cheaper than somebody who wants to import Vietnamese rice into Ghana. Or a chicken farmer can't raise poultry to, you know, cheaper than what a Brazilian farmer will produce it and have it shipped to Ghana, which is sad. So it shows that our policies are not really geared towards you know, making the best for the welfare of the citizens. And there's a lot of foreign control of the food systems. A lot of the sugar in Ghana is controlled by foreigners, flour controlled by foreigners, a lot of rice is imported, and these are now staples. So you can imagine the impact on families, because, you know, there's less people who are growing these foods. And that's a problem for food security, it's a problem for food sovereignty. You know, food sovereignty is about the type of food that you even want to eat. It's not about the food that you just can afford to eat because that's what is imported into the country. It's not about eating yellow maize because it was brought into the country and is animal feed in another country and ends up in your country as aid. And so, yes, that's food security. No, it has to satisfy your palate. It has to, you know, cheer your spirits. That's what food is. And you have a choice to choose the food that you want to eat. So food sovereignty is a very heavy concept. It takes into account your ability to grow food in 10, 20 years' time. So if you think you're growing food today, doing it in a very harmful way, you're not really growing food. You're creating an abyss for yourself, and you find yourself in it one day. And this is what a lot of countries are doing without realizing that it's a short-term way to grow food.
So I mentioned in your intro that you're a Pan-Africanist. How do your views as a Pan-Africanist and a person advocating African food sovereignty, where do those two things merge?
First of all, I mean, you know, as an African man, food is is the number one most important thing. You know, we don't play with our food. And, you know, in sustaining ourselves, you know, the first law of nature, which is self-sustenance and survival, you can't forget about food. And so food, like I said, it must be nutritious and tasty, the food that we love to eat. And I believe that every single Pan-African must realize that the issue of our food sovereignty is one of the most important struggles to achieve and to conquer. The ability for Black families, Black communities to feed themselves, so you don't get fed on inferior quality food, food that's shipped to our communities because it's of a cheaper quality. You know, that will happen to you when you don't grow your own food. That will happen to you when you're not in charge of, you know, growing your food. And then ultimately you're not in charge of your destiny. You know, life is quite simple. Life is quite simple in the fact that if you live off the land, it's really about waking up. You know, you've seen the sun is up, the creator created the sunshine, you grow your food. When the sun is too hot, you take a break. Then you can cook your food, you can eat your food. Life can just revolve around growing your food, eating your food, and living. You didn't need any job if you want to live nicely. Just live and grow food and eat and survive. You know, but we've really complicated life. That life is now about, you know, getting your car, driving here and there and there. But when you go to rural areas, you find communities, you know, hamlets that are far from all the urban and other people confusing them, and they live very simple lives. And they don't have any kind of serious form of work to do. They just farm. They work on their farm, they exercise, and they get food to eat. And then the sun goes down and they sleep. And then they wake up again and they live a very simple life. So food, without food, Africa doesn't have a future, because the control of populations is so thorough when you have to beg for food. And so there is no African liberation where there is no food sovereignty. And I believe that the issue of food sovereignty would have been at the forefront of all our freedom fighters, our ancestors who, showed us that high benchmark, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Osagyefo Dr. Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Francis Cress Welsing, everybody, I can go down a whole list of names to mention. They would have realized in these times that the issue of food is something that you can't joke with. And if we all own it, then there's nothing about, being able to topple any system, because everybody's doing it. Everybody wants to grow their own food. Everybody wants to save seeds. Everybody wants to barter with their neighbor. Unfortunately, in Ghana now, Ghana has joined UPOV, which is this international organization for the protection of new plant varieties. And they have lobbied the government of Ghana to introduce a law into Ghana where now a farmer who is found exchanging or saving or selling seeds, patented seeds, can go to jail for up to 10 years, a minimum of 10 years. This is unprecedented on the planet, I think. I don't think there's any country where you can go to jail for 10 years minimum. This is reflective of the new framework that they're trying to get African countries to fit into, to put these very rigid laws into your country, which really disenfranchise the masses of the people. You can imagine how many people risk going to jail because they're saving and exchanging a patented seed, because you can't tell the difference between a GM seed and then a natural seed. You might be able to tell some differences when the plant starts growing, or maybe the way the food tastes, but looking at the seeds, so how do you distinguish? And then that means that almost every Ghanaian can be, liable for this if you get caught. The problem is that these companies come to Africa, they take the germplasm that's been developed by communities over centuries and millennia, they go back to the lab, tweak it a little bit, patent it, and then it now becomes criminal for the very communities where these plants were produced to save them. And we believe that this is wrong. There's no benefit sharing schemes, and it's all reflective of a very traditionally extractivist mind frame, just to take.
Brother Baffour, in just a minute, we're going to go to Q&A with the other participants. But this is probably the most important question, and that is for people who are watching this in the United States, Canada, or other places in the African world, how can they support Food Sovereignty Ghana? And the second question, Sister Price asked how people can contact you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. First of all, we have a Facebook page. Just look up Food Sovereignty Ghana. We also have a website, which is www.foodsovereigntyghana.org. All one word. So we are on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. If you look up Food Sovereignty Ghana, and go to our page, like our page. Very soon we'll be starting to raise funds from our page. Anything you can give us from your heart, if it's $1, if it's $10, whatever you think you don't mind letting go of to support a very noble cause, we will be glad to put it to the best use. And so, stay tuned to our social media handles so that when we start raising funds, you'll be able to, support us. But also save the seeds where you come from, the kind of food that you like to eat, save them, because it's very important. We are one family, and these seeds belong to all of us. And we should be able to save these seeds so that these patented seeds don't take over. In the US, you know that there's because their farms have paid royalties to companies where they didn't want to even have these crops growing on their lands. So it's very important that we save these seeds. So I'd encourage our family and our communities to save the seeds, and then to teach one another. We can't have the media teaching us. The media a lot of it exists to keep us, numbed and dumb to some of the most important issues of our welfare. So each and every one of us has to be an ambassador. Each and every one has to help pull up a brother or sister who is not thinking like we're thinking, who's not seeing the road well, who's not understanding and looking at things. Because trust me, there's so many distractions today. There's so many people who know the scores of their favorite team, or just the latest distractions from the phones. Meanwhile, the issue of food is so fundamental. So I think we should all become ambassadors. We should start growing food at home. Every single person should, have a little backyard garden, even because food production is changing across the planet. I know in the US, there's more food that's starting to be grown in factories, in warehouses. So very soon, if you don't grow your own food, the source of your food is going to be controlled. Whatever they put into the food, where it's grown, whatever carcinogenic chemicals are sprayed on it, you just have to accept the food as it is. But if you grow your own food, like that saying says, it's like printing your own money, and you add value to yourself. So visit our Facebook page, our Twitter handle, our website, support us, like, share it, and teach others.
And again, for those who want to make donations, they can do that on the website.
Yes, but currently we don't have. We're now configuring a mobile money account so that we can get payments sent to us. We do have a bank account actually, and we have our bank details on our website. So our bank account details are on our website, and if you want to do a transfer to our account, yes, internationally that works. But we're trying to get other mediums that are easier to send money through social media. But we do have account details on our website if you want to send us something through our bank account at the Agricultural Development Bank.
So I want to challenge those who are on the call this evening to see if we can raise $500 for Food Sovereignty Ghana. And I'm going to start by pledging $100.
Oh,
and
wow.
There are others on the call who can make a similar pledge. And Brother Baffour has already explained to us how we can get that money to the organization. So during the rest of the call, if you are interested in this challenge and helping to raise $500 and you can make a pledge, please put that in the chat. Brother Baffour, we're going to go to the Q&A, and we have several questions already in the chat. I'll read some of those, and we will we'll call on others if we get through all of the ones that people already have in the chat. So sure. Sheikh Ahmed Amba Mbake asks, how are students at the University of Legon involved in the food movement?
Okay. Unfortunately, there are different groupings and institutions on campus that are also funded by these organizations who are pro-GMO. So unfortunately, there are lots of new students who are coming through the mill, learning that GMO is good, that it's the only solution for the world, that the population of the world is rising. So there's a growing crop of students who are being taught this and being made to think that this is the solution for agriculture's challenges. Having said that, there are pockets of students who also read through the lines, and we have different supports on campus. But there are lots of students that the university is grooming through the different institutions on campus that receive foreign funding, and they're trying to, change the dimension, relegate indigenous knowledge down, and then look forward to these Western solutions to solve our problems.
So, Brother Baffour, we've already surpassed the $500 mark. We have people who have pledged more than that already. So we're going to up the ante, wow, and we're going to see if we can get to $1,000 before we end this. Yeah. And again,
man,
this is on the honor system. So if you have pledged this money, you have to go to the website of Food Sovereignty Ghana, get the bank details, and see that the money gets there. So if you're pledging, please make sure that you follow through so that they actually get that money. Thank you to everyone who is pledged. And we have several people. I'm not going to read all the names, but thank you to all of those who pledged. Sister Price asked, she said, please elaborate on women having power or voice and providing education within Food Sovereignty Ghana? She wants to dig a little bit deeper on that question I asked you about the roles that women play.
Okay. Well, I mean, our our current secretary is a lady, Nanama. Actually, we have two Nanamas. So the senior Nanama, she is the vice chair, and so she's she deputizes for our chair, plays a very important role in advocacy and in our administrative and research works. Also, we have Nanama, who we call Nam2. She's our secretary. Also very, very intelligent lady, and she's very helpful. And so these are the two executives that we have. We have 5 other colleagues who are on the executive board, but we're looking for more ladies, to come in and support our work. We do have other ladies who support our work, but not in that official capacity and role. I mean, one of them, for instance, being in Karuka, who was a big supporter of food sovereignty for many years. So we have lots of supporters who are female around the world. We've been visited by the majority of people who visited Ghana for research that have interviewed me are actually females that have been involved in university research in some country and have traveled to Ghana, interested in food sovereignty. Most of them have been females. I think I've been interviewed by about maybe 3 or 4 guys and over 15 or 16 women in the past 2 years. So yeah, the role of women is very important, especially because when you engage the communities, it's often the women you're going to speak to about food, about the importance of nutrition to their families. So women are very important to us.
Brother Baffour, Brother Sheikh Amadou Bamba Mbake has just pledged $500, so we are now over the $1,000 mark.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much.
We're very humble.
Thank you. We hope this moves your work forward. Sister Joyce King asked, what experiences you've had that have brought you to this high level of consciousness and understanding given the post-colonial context in Ghana?
Okay, I mean, I was lucky to have lived in the US to see it for myself firsthand, and to experience life, to understand the system, because when you really haven't been there, it's hard to explain, that that's not the land of milk and honey. I always tell people that it's like a casino. It looks very bright and shiny outside, but net you end up being a loser coming out, because that's just how it is, the system. And so I just started reading more books about our history. Music did a lot, to orient me right. The music of Bob Marley was very, very critical to opening my mind up, and then reading books from all kinds of people, watching all kinds of videos, and then meeting all kinds of people. Then you end up belonging to a community that nurtures you, and then this is what you see today. I'm the product of a community that has tried to make the best of the examples that we have to follow from our ancestors, and that's been critical. Knowing that our ancestors' way is the best way, that's been very critical for me, discovering this path. It's key, because if you don't believe that your ancestors have any worth, it is very, very, very difficult to start seeing any hope, to start seeing anything good in Africa. You just have to have that first place of mind, which is, look, your ancestors are very revered beings, very intelligent beings, and that they are still in touch with us. They like Marcus Garvey said, that you never leave the universe. So Africans have always known how to be in commune with their ancestors. Unfortunately, around the world, we're being taught how to praise the ancestors of others, but we should be in touch with our own ancestors, and it's very, very important. So I think that's also what's played a very big role in my life. My personal family, the examples that my grandmother, grandfathers and the roles that they played in my life kept me connected to home, and that's made a very big difference. And I thank them a lot for the foundations they laid.
Sister Imara, who may still be in Ghana, I know she was recently in Ghana, asked if you could talk about the cocoa farmer cooperatives that are developing.
Okay, yes, big up Sister Imara. She's a very important member of our community. Has a very nice little eatery and a juice bar in the botanical garden on the mountain. And she's important supporter of food sovereignty. She grows her, a lot of her own food, and so want to big her up for that. But yes, the cooperatives, the cocoa cooperatives have existed for a while in Ghana because cocoa is our #1 cash crop. But there are more people who are trying to get involved in marketing and trading cocoa, where cocoa gets the farmer gets more value from the cocoa end product. Because unfortunately, lots of Ghanaian farmers have never tasted chocolate in their lives. They don't know what they don't know what the end product ends up being. And so because it's the most margins are made upstream, they don't get to enjoy so much. But with cooperatives, that helps to guarantee, a more equitable price, for farmers when they bring their produce all together. So for cocoa being a very important, cash crop in Ghana, the structure of a cooperative is very important to able to encourage stability and equity. And so the market forces are dampened when you work together in numbers.
Thank you, Brother Kweku. I'm scrolling through the chat, just trying to see what other questions that we have. What's the best way to get some of that good chocolate?
Oh, well, if you're really interested, you a mail, and we can find out how to get it as close to you as possible. But that's fantastic, because I believe we should be pushing Ghanaian chocolate to all 4 corners of the planet. It's the best chocolate in the world. Very, very rich in cocoa. Like I said, if you've been eating chocolate from outside, you've been eating a lot of milk. But this is rich in cocoa. So if you let us know your number and I can get it from Malik, we can arrange to see how to get some good Ghanaian cocoa to as close as possible for you. And it could be something that you end up making a living from, because I'm sure a lot of people will be coming to you for that.
I'm going to see if we can organize these donations a little bit better. So I'm going to ask everyone who is pledged, if you could please email me, and I just put my email in the chat. And what we'll find a way to do is to consolidate all of these. So perhaps we can have you send the donations to the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, and then we can send one check rather than having 20 people send all these smaller donations. So
That's
if you
true.
pledge, please email me. I put my email address in the chat. Please copy that and get back in touch with me, and I'll send the email out to the entire group of people who have pledged so that we can organize it in a way that's a bit easier. And I see Sister Sheila Mohammed has pledged $100 of money is still coming in. So evidently what you're saying is resonating with people. People appreciate the work that you're doing, and stand ready to support it. Brother Baffour, what is it that inspires you?
The example of our great ancestors. I mean, the Honorable Marcus Garvey. How can you not be inspired by a man who just stood up in such a time, and without tools like Facebook and Twitter was able to rally 4 million Black people and organize them? I mean, you have to admire it, especially when you understand what we're going through today. You really, really have to admire the achievements of such people. Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, if you look at the trials he had, opposition from our own people on the ground, and the passion to just see through this vision, and then the integrity with which he led. He didn't steal our funds, so his daughter Samia doesn't have a state house. that she owns, that her father pinched and bequeathed to her. So these examples are very inspiring. The likes of Dr. Henrik Clark and all our teachers. Those are the people that inspire us, because they are very relevant to our situation as a Black people on this planet. We've been the most battered race, the most violently treated, and then when you have a human being who gives that race hope, those people are God sent. And if you are a human being with a little bit of life in you, you must get inspired by someone who comes and is just born to come and uplift, and those are the people who inspire me. All our great musicians, who've just in their own way speak to us in different languages, and I think that's definitely what inspires me.
So you mentioned Sister Samia Mohammed, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah's daughter, who, as I recall, ran for president a couple of years ago. Are there Anan Lololi, who, by the way, is my teacher and the person who introduced me to this food movement, and incidentally would be our next guest on July 27th. I'll talk more about that later. But he asked if you have support from other politicians in Ghana, and do you have support from Ghanaians in the diaspora?
Well, in Ghana, we have two main political parties. So we have the MPP and the NDC. And they're like the Democrats and the Republicans. They just take turns, for a ride. So most of the politicians who belong to those parties try and stay away from food sovereignty, because at the end of the day, their governments come in power and then don't do what they're supposed to do for the people. So the mainstream politicians who belong to those two parties are not, big fans of food sovereignty Ghana. However, people who belong to the smaller parties, like Dr. Henry Latte, like Madame Samia Nkrumah, for instance, others like that have come out and supported our cause. So we really respect them for that. But yes, the mainstream politicians try and stay away from it, though they like to eat organic food at home. Because of the way that they are lobbied, they try to pretend that they don't know, and but it's we don't believe the hype. We don't believe the hype at all.
So Sister Imara, who asked about the cocoa cooperative earlier, first of all, she says she's not the same Imara you were referring to.
Oh, okay.
But she has a follow-up question. Her follow-up question is, how much of a threat are the Chinese and their cocoa production?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the context of the fact that you see what China is doing in all other things, and how competitive they are, as far as you look at 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in the making of phones and cars and all that, where they were 20 years ago and where they are now. So you can use that in the same context, that they're now coming into the cocoa growing industry. We are the champions now, but if we're not careful, 5-10 years from now, we may not be any significant player in the industry. The other important thing is that climate change is also affecting cocoa production. So the hotter the climate is getting, the worse it's getting for cocoa production in the cocoa growing areas. Same for things like coffee. So we have to pay attention to the way that we do food production holistically, because you can't be contributing to these drastic changes in our environment.
Sister Tasha Gomes, who is living in Brooklyn, originally from Trinidad, asked, what problem do the GMOs propose to solve for farmers in Ghana? And what makes growing or accepting these seeds appealing to folks who would naturally prefer natural and organic, traditionally grown food? What is the appeal that people seem to have for GMOs? Or what is the argument that's being made for GMOs?
Well, the scientists are saying that they'll give a higher yield. So most of the farmers are poor farmers. They're looking for more money, and they bite the hook. They think that GM crops will give you a higher yield. That myth has been dispelled because, like I said, our own neighbor was not able to produce those high yields, and when they went back to conventional cotton, they were producing more cotton than they did under GM. So the myth about the yields is being sold to them. The myth about the resistance to pests, but this again in South Africa, they had a genetically modified form of maize, which received even worse pest infestation than they had known, and so they had to discard that type. So even that myth about the pest resistance, because something like the bollworm in the US is already resistant to GM cotton in India. And so these insects do develop resistance. So at the end of the day, you go tweaking a small problem, you create another bigger problem. And then how much tampering are you going to do in the food chain not to affect the ecosystem the way we are doing? So the science community is selling them this myth that you're going to have high yields, that you're going to use less pesticides to spray, and so on and so forth. And it's unfortunate because there's no. That's why I said that the scientific community themselves do not agree on they don't have consensus on the safety of GMOs. That alone is the biggest indicator, which should allow the precautionary principle to play. And the precautionary principle exists in the Cartagena Protocol for Biosafety, where if the unintended risks are huge, then you must tread cautiously. So obviously, GM is something that we need to tread very cautiously with because of the irreversible effects of releasing these things into the environment.
Sister Kwete in Dallas says, thank you, Brother Kweku. In 2016, you spoke via phone to a food co-op conference we held here in Dallas.
I remember her very well.
Have you thought to expand your organization to agricultural organizations in the diaspora?
Yes, well, I mean, when I was introduced to Malik, this was the idea that we need to be collaborating more, and I think that this call in itself is reflective of the fact that we've started that work. That on both sides of the Atlantic, we are one family, and we need to exchange ideas, exchange information. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. What has worked for any one of us, we should share so that we take advantage of hindsight and all those things, and just progress as a people.
Brother Kweku, earlier you talked about African wisdom, traditional African wisdom, and I'm going to ask you to end by sharing some wise words, whatever wisdom you want to drop on us that you think would be appropriate tonight.
Well, there's a proverb that I love which says that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So that's very deep, that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So in the way we should tread lightly, because it's really on loan. This doesn't belong to us. We're supposed to use it nicely and leave it nicely and continue. And the way that we're approaching food production, the next generation is going to come and see half the lizards, none of the bees, and so on and so forth. And that's not sustainable for life. So let's think about future generations, and let's do like our ancestors did, to think far.
Brother Kweku, I thought I was finished with the questions, but Elder Brother Charles Simmons just put a question in the chat, and as an elder, he has special privilege. So he asked, are local media such as radio broadcast or the internet in local languages being used to educate the farmers about the environment and food issues?
Yes, we're starting to do that more. We're actually going to dial that up because the pro-GM side is dialing up their campaign, trying to mislead Ghanaians, saying that Ghanaians want GMO. Ghanaians are waiting for GMO. So we've read a few articles in the past month where this has been the narrative. So it's very important that we also push our narrative and get Ghanaians to respond, to engage them, and create platforms of our own that can get Ghanaians engaged. So if any of you know a Ghanaian living in the US, you need to talk to them about the facts that they need to know this, so that when they come home, they also spread the word to their family. Our brothers and sisters in the US need to be able to come back home with that knowledge to, you know, let our people also know the truth of what's happening, because a lot of what we get fed is what we see through Hollywood, and you know what that does. That prepares your mind. Excuse me, prepares your mind for the fantasy. So it's very important that you being out there are able to help change the mindset. You know, a lot of Africans on the continent here look at our brothers and sisters outside in a very aspirational way. And you need to be able to let them know what's shiny and what's of value and what's really useless, and not worth going into. And I think that we can benefit a lot from exchanging information.
Brother Kweku, I want to thank you so much for being our guest, and I especially want to thank you because I think it's about 12:30 in the morning there, and I want to thank you for adjusting yourself to this Eastern American Standard Time in order to be available. We're greatly appreciated. And I want to quote my brother Michael Banner, who said, "This has been supremely inspirational." And I think he has summed it up. I don't have any words to add to that. This has been supremely inspirational. But I am inspired by both the work of Food Sovereignty Ghana, the leadership that you're providing, and I'm also inspired by the tremendous outpouring of support by the people who have pledged more than $1,000 on this call to support the work that your organization is doing. I also want to thank Sister Nzele Kokai, who is behind the scenes managing all the backroom functions and making sure that this went smoothly and made sure all the invitations went out and what have you. I appreciate you greatly. And I want to announce that we're going to have the second in the series, this International Black Food Sovereignty webinar series on Wednesday, July 27th at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, United States Eastern Standard Time. And the guest will be my teacher, Anand Zola Laloli, who is one of the founders of the African Food Basket and who leads the Black Food Sovereignty Working Group of Toronto. They have, through their excellent work, been able to push the city government of Toronto to create a Black food sovereignty plan, which is the only such plan that I know of anywhere in the world that explicitly calls out Black food sovereignty and has been endorsed by a governmental entity. So we want to make sure that you all join us and spread the word for that. Again, that will be on Wednesday, July 27th at 7 p.m. U.S. Standard Time. Brother Baffour, again, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We want to thank all of those who registered and participated in this. Again, if you pledge, please make sure that you email me so that we can coordinate these pledges, and we'll make sure that the money gets to the organization. And hopefully this is just one step towards building the kind of Pan-African unity that we need to build African food sovereignty globally. So again, thank you, Brother Baffour. Thank you all who joined us. Go in peace.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you who supported us, and forward ever, in the words of Osagyefo Dr. Nkrumah, forward ever.